providing financial straight talk for those working and enjoying life after work. This is America's Financial Headquarters.
This is Mark Mersman enjoying conversation today here at America's Financial Headquarters with Mike Walters. Well, we certainly invite you to call the 24/7 hotline. If you have a question, leave a voicemail. That's 888-888-9572. Now, Mike, I got to ask you, have you seen the new Bond movie?
I have not, but it's on the agenda for the holiday weekend coming up.
Good. The new Bond movie, Skyfall, scored the best Bond debut ever last weekend. It brought in over $88 million at the box office. And I'm sure that number will continue to increase. Obviously, with the Thanksgiving holiday coming up, a lot of families will do the movie thing together. But another thing that we would encourage everybody, as long as you have your family together, your children, perhaps some extended family in town, it presents an incredible opportunity to have some financial conversations that aren't always the easiest to have. Sometimes talking about what's going to happen after you're gone is a hard conversation to have, but I think it's a very important one.
I think it is too. We call it the legacy discussion,
right.
Or the legacy family meeting, if you will. And we encourage to meet with your advisor, and if they don't do this for you automatically, they should. All of the Financial HQ Network advisors will be in contact with their clientele, offering up their services between Christmas and Thanksgiving, or Thanksgiving and Christmas, I guess I should say, because that's a time when family tends to all come back to town. And as you pointed out, Mark, it's a difficult discussion for a lot of people to have. They don't know how to sit down and have the discussion, and it's more than just the money. It's about the legacy. It's about the things that you want to instill into the next generation, and it's a great time to bring people together, to get them on the same page, to eliminate a lot of question marks.
That's right. I wanted to share a story with you about the best-selling author Michael Crichton. Many of you may know that name. You certainly are familiar with his work. He was the writer of ER, the wildly popular show. He was also the writer for Jurassic Park. The story of his estate is a rather unfortunate one. He actually had done a very good job for all intents and purposes. He prepared carefully. He was on his fifth marriage, but he'd done a premarital agreement with his fifth and surviving wife. Mr. Crichton passed away of cancer in 2008, and the lesson from his scenario was a very simple one, but it kind of goes to show you that the little things really do matter, and taking some time to really dot I's and cross T's in your financial and estate planning affairs is very important. What had happened with Michael Crichton, when he passed, he and his wife were expecting a new baby. And Michael Crichton passed away prior to his child being born. And though he had gone through great lengths in earlier planning, the fact of the matter is that he failed to provide for his unborn child. So in his legal documents, it had basically excluded any unborn children from his future estate. And so what had happened was, when he passed, this child is now born to his fifth wife, who he had a premarital agreement set up with, and he basically excluded his unborn child from his estate entirely.
And I would imagine he did not do that on purpose.
No, it was just a little tidbit within the legal documents that, normally in a legal document such as that, you're going to include unborn children so that, you're not ultimately disinheriting them. But it's a lesson that we can all learn from, that anytime there is a major life event, divorce, remarriage, children being born, grandchildren being born,
first marriage,
you need to sit down, review your legal documents.
Yep. Update your estate plans. And that's one of the four things that we always talk about, Mark. We're constantly reminding people, plan first, invest second.
Right.
And as we talk through some of the big errors that take place in estate planning. We were just talking about the fact that Michael Crichton, and you could point to Whitney Houston, you could point to a lot of different celebrities who have had just huge disasters in their financial and estate planning. And hopefully it's an opportunity for you to learn and stay one step ahead of these things so that it doesn't happen to you as you're looking at your own estate plans. And what Michael Crichton did is he simply neglected to update his estate plans on a regular basis. And so that's one of our four main things that we always talk about. A couple of the others, first of all, is not having a will. It's amazing. They believe, statistically speaking, that 2/3 of adults in the United States do not have a written will.
Basic will.
Yeah, so over half of the population doesn't have a basic will. And as I always like to say, you actually do have a will. It's just a matter of who do you want to write it.
Right.
Do you want to write it, or do you want your state to write it? Because if you don't have a will, you're now going by the de facto writings of the state that you live in and how that's going to get distributed for your heirs.
Right.
Number two on that hit list is failure to set up a trust. So it sounds like in your Michael Crichton discussion, there was a trust there. He just didn't keep it up to date.
Right.
So the step prior to that would be the actual creation of a trust, be it a living trust or some of the other specialty trusts that are available. You need to create it, but then, again, statistically speaking, I've been told by some attorney friends that they believe that over half of the people they've created trusts for, that they never get funded. And the items, the assets, the bank accounts, the physical items that you own that carry value, those things are never retitled into the trust, which is what you need to do, because the trust doesn't do you any good if you don't put anything into it.
You're listening to America's Financial Headquarters, and we are discussing today a bit about estate planning and how to have that conversation, how to engage in that conversation, in the four basic things that at the very least you should employ within your estate plan and have reviewed. What were the third and the fourth?
So the first was not having a will. The second is failure to set up the trust, and then kind of an adjunct to that is not properly funding the trust, not reassigning that. By the way, my parents actually did the exact same thing. They set up a living trust. A year ticked by. They knew they needed to go visit the bank and everything else and get all those things retitled in the trust. A year ticked by. We sat down. They hadn't put anything in. They totally forgot about it. So they've now gone back and funded that trust. And luckily, nothing significant happened to either of them in that meantime. Then we talked about neglecting to update your estate plan, which is the Michael Crichton discussion. And then the fourth and final big piece is forgetting to plan for disability.
Right.
So a good set of trust documents is going to have a power of attorney in it, so that if something happens to you or you're not available, your spouse, for example, could have legal power of attorney to make decisions. But there's also a thing called a medical power of attorney. Now, each state sometimes has different terminology for that, so I'm kind of throwing a blanket over that generically for a medical power of attorney. But what happens if I'm entirely incapacitated, I'm laying in a hospital bed, and now I want certain things to happen? I need to have entrusted and given someone that power so that they can make those decisions. And it might even be something in terms of them being able to pull the plug.
It's the old Terry Schiavo case. If you're
right,
for those of you that can remember that, that set of unfortunate set of circumstances really brought what you're discussing to light, and it really stressed the importance of having those documents, in a working order. I want to discuss a little bit about how we have the conversation with the family. So, mom and dad are sitting around Thanksgiving dinner. Now, I wouldn't necessarily have this conversation at Thanksgiving dinner, maybe afterwards, but
maybe before everybody falls asleep afterwards.
Well, that's a good point. Before nap time or clearly after nap time, establish the ground rules. Understand who you want to be a part of this conversation. Establish what's in play and what's out of play and out of bounds from a discussion standpoint. So if you don't want to talk about how much money you're working with, that's fine. Let your children know, folks, guys, this is off the table. We're not going to talk about how much in assets we have or how much you're going to get. establish those ground rules in advance. But we need to discuss what's going to happen should we, need medical help. What's going to happen when we pass away? How are these assets going to be divided? Where can you find all these documents? Who do you need to go and sit down with? Do you need to sit down with the HQ network advisor? Do you need to sit down with such and so-and-so attorney? So those are all the very important items when it comes to that family conversation.